Hi guys, Mrs. B here. Today I'm going to talk about how we convert between percentages, fractions and decimals. So if we start with something simple like 1/10, and we want to write that as a decimal. So I have to think about how do I convert between fractions and decimals, and really it's what does this line here in the fraction mean? It means divide. So what that actually says is 1 divided by 10. So let's do that. I've got 1 divided by 10. Okay, how many 10s go into 1? None. So I have to create a decimal point. How many go into 10? 1. So 1/10 as a decimal is 0.1. Something you might notice is that if I just were to write 1 and move the decimal place 1 place to the left, I have the same answer. So you might remember from primary school learning dividing by 10 means shifting the decimal 1 place, and timesing by 10 shifting the decimal 1 place the other way. Something a little bit more complex, 2/5. And I want to write that as a decimal. So I've got two different ways I can tackle this. I can do what we just did, and I can do 2 divided by 5. Okay, how many 5s are there in 2? None. Adding a decimal and a 0. How many in 20? 4. So 2 divided by 5 equals 0.4. Now the other way to think about this is I know that if I'm timesing or dividing by 10, I'm going to move the decimal. What if I can have a multiple of 10 on the bottom of this fraction? So if I think about 2/5, what do I need to multiply this fraction by to get a multiple of 10 on the denominator? Well, I know that 5 2s are 10, so I'm going to multiply by 2 on the bottom, but I can't just multiply the 5 by 2. I also have to multiply the top. Now I'm allowed to do that because 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm really just multiplying by 1, always allowed. Okay, so multiplying this fraction, I get 2 times 2 is 4, over 5 times 2 is 10. And now our rule we just talked about, where I start with 4 and I move the decimal point 1 place. There we go, same answer. So we've converted from a fraction to a decimal, but then we also want to look at percentage. So how can I convert this fraction or this decimal to a percentage? And I have to think about, well, what does percent, this beautiful symbol, actually mean? Percent. All right, now cent is maybe the easy one. So if I think about dollars and cents, how many cents in a dollar? There's 100. That's what cent means, 100. Okay, centennial, 100 years. Per means for every. Yep, traveling at 60 kilometers per hour, meaning in an hour you would have traveled 60 kilometers. So for every hour, it's 60 kilometers, that's per. So per cent for every 100. How does this help me? So if I had, say, 20%, what that actually means is 20 divided by 100. Now you'll note that if I tilt this percent sign, this is how we remember it, on its side a little bit, I actually get the divide sign. So we're going to divide by 100. So 20 divided by 100, now we just said that when we divide by 10 we move the decimal 1 place. When we divide by 100 we move twice. So I've got 20 and I'm moving the decimal twice, 1, 2. Equals 0.2. All right. So we can look back at our original fraction, and if we're trying to convert this to a percentage, I need to have 100 on the bottom of that fraction. So I need to figure out a fraction that I can multiply by that will give me a denominator of 100. So I know 10 times 10 will give me 100. So I have to multiply the top by the same thing. So I get 40 divided by 100, which tells me that it's 40%. Now we can convert the other way. If I were to start with a decimal, let's say 0.3, and I wanted to write that as a fraction. Okay, I can start by looking at the place. So this is the tenths column. After that would be the hundredths. So this tells me that this automatically is 3/10. So I've converted it to a fraction. I then want it as a percentage. So again, I want 100 on the denominator here. So I'm going to multiply by 10 over 10. Gives me 30 out of 100%. So it's 30%. So you might be noticing a pattern that with the percentage I'm moving the decimal 1, 2 spaces every time for the 100. So I might be able to read directly from this 0.3 straight to that, saying that's 30%, and that's fantastic if you're noticing that already. So we might look at something a little bit more complex. If we had 22.1% and we're asked to write that as a decimal. Okay, now I know I have to move my decimal two places. So I'm starting here. 1, 2. I'd be calling that 0.221 as a decimal. Now if I wanted to write that as a fraction, this is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this would be 221 divided by 1,000.